A slap, a silence, and two worlds that should never have collided crashed into each other. The morning air in Green Valley carried the familiar scent of freshly baked bread and roasted coffee beans, a comforting constant in Wren Holloway's otherwise unpredictable life. At 30, she'd mastered the art of appearing put together while barely holding on, a skill that served her well as the manager of Haven's Corner, the town's beloved coffee shop. "Morning, Mrs. Henderson," Wren called out, her voice warm despite the exhaustion that clung to her bones. She tucked a rebellious strand of auburn hair behind her ear, the rest trapped in her signature messy bun. "The usual today?" The elderly regular smiled, the corners of her eyes crinkling. "You know me too well, dear. How's your mother doing?" Wren's fingers instinctively found the silver ring on her right hand, twisting it once, twice. "Taking it day by day. The new medication seems to be helping." She managed a smile that didn't quite reach her dark brown eyes, those same eyes that had seen too much too soon. The morning rush ebbed and flowed like a familiar dance. Wren moved between the espresso machine and counter with practiced grace, her worn sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. The small heart-adorned coffee cup tattooed on her left wrist peeked out from beneath her sleeve as she worked, a permanent reminder of her passion and purpose. It happened at exactly 9:47 a.m. The bell above the door chimed and the atmosphere in Haven's Corner shifted. He entered like a storm front, all dark suits and sharp edges, bringing with him the chill of big city ambition. Cormac Elias Duval stood at 6'2", but his presence made him seem even taller. His steel blue eyes surveyed the cafe with the calculated interest of someone used to owning everything they saw. Wren noticed him immediately. It was impossible not to. He carried himself with the kind of confidence that came from never having to question your place in the world. His dark hair was swept back professionally, and a mysterious scar cut through his right eyebrow, adding a hint of intrigue to his otherwise perfectly curated appearance. "I'll be with you in just a moment," Wren called out, finishing up Mrs. Henderson's order. She could feel his impatience radiating across the counter. "I don't have just a moment," he replied, his voice carrying the crisp edge of someone accustomed to immediate attention. "I have a meeting in 20 minutes. Wren took a deep breath, handed Mrs. Henderson her drink, and turned to face him. "Welcome to Haven's Corner. What can I get started for you?" "Double espresso, 1 raw sugar, heated to exactly 165 degrees, and make it quick." He didn't look up from his phone as he spoke, fingers tapping away at the screen. "Of course, that'll be 375ers. He handed over a black credit card without looking at the price. The name caught Wren's eye. Cormac E. Duval, CEO of Duval Tech Solutions, the tech giant that had been making headlines for its aggressive expansion into smaller markets. Wren worked efficiently, pulling the perfect shots of espresso. Years of experience guided her hands as she prepared his drink exactly as requested. But as she turned to serve it, another customer called out about a mistake in their order. "Just 1 second, Mr. Duval," she said, moving to handle the issue first. It was a simple fix, but those seconds felt like hours under his increasingly irritated stare. When she finally handed him his drink, his patience had evaporated. He took one sip and his expression darkened. "This is barely lukewarm. Do you have any idea who I am? Someone who needs their coffee reheated?" The words slipped out before Wren could stop them, exhaustion and frustration temporarily overwhelming her professional demeanor. His eyes snapped to her face, narrowing dangerously. "I don't know how things work in this backwater town, but where I'm from, service industry workers show proper respect, or they find themselves looking for new jobs." The cafe fell silent. Other customers turned to watch, their expressions a mix of concern and curiosity. Wren felt heat rising to her cheeks, but she stood her ground. "Sir, I'm happy to make you a fresh drink, but I won't be threatened in my own cafe." "Your cafe?" He laughed, cold and sharp. "Let me guess, you're just another small-town dreamer playing at business. People like you serve people like me. That's the natural order of things." Something inside Wren snapped. The weight of sleepless nights spent caring for her mother, the stack of medical bills on her kitchen table, the constant struggle to keep her dignity intact. It all came crashing down in one moment. Her hand moved before her mind could catch up. The slap echoed through the silent cafe like a thunderclap. Wren's palm stung, and Cormac's head had turned slightly to the side, a red mark blooming on his cheek. His coffee cup clattered to the floor, dark liquid spreading across the tiles like spilled ink. Time seemed to stop. Wren's heart pounded in her chest as the reality of what she'd done crashed over her. This wasn't her. She didn't solve problems with violence, no matter how justified it might feel in the moment. She started, her voice shaking. I'm sorry. That was completely unprofessional. She pressed her trembling hands against her apron, fighting to maintain composure as tears threatened to spill. I shouldn't have done that regardless of what was said. Cormac touched his cheek, those steel blue eyes boring into her with an intensity that made her want to disappear. But there was something else there too. Surprise, certainly, but also a flicker of something deeper, something that looked almost like respect. Without a word, he turned and walked out, leaving behind a stunned audience and a mess of spilled coffee. The bell chimed again, somehow louder in his wake. Wren's hands shook as she grabbed a mop from the back room. As she cleaned up the spill, she couldn't shake the feeling that this moment, this collision of worlds, would have consequences far beyond a ruined cup of coffee and a stinging palm. Mrs. Henderson appeared at her side with a handful of napkins. Don't you worry about him, dear. Some people need a reminder that money can't buy everything. Wren managed a weak smile, but her mind was already racing through worst-case scenarios. Would he press charges? Call the health department? Find some way to shut them down? She thought of her mother, of the medications they could barely afford, of all the people who depended on their morning coffee and friendly conversation. One moment of lost control could cost her everything she'd worked so hard to build. But as she straightened up, squaring her shoulders and forcing herself to face the rest of the day, Wren couldn't deny the small spark of satisfaction she felt. For just one moment, she'd stood up to the kind of person who'd spent a lifetime looking down on people like her. She just hoped that moment of courage wouldn't turn out to be the biggest mistake of her life. The morning after the incident, Wren arrived at Haven's Corner an hour earlier than usual. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, evidence of a sleepless night spent wondering if police officers would show up at her door. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Cormac Duval's shocked expression, felt the sting in her palm, heard the collective gasp of her customers. "You're here early," called a familiar voice. Regina Martinez, her most reliable barista, was already setting up the coffee grinders. At 55, Regina had been working at Haven's Corner longer than Wren had been alive, and she treated the younger woman like a daughter. Still thinking about yesterday's drama with Mr. Fancy Suit? Wren managed a weak smile as she tied her apron. I keep expecting the worst. One Google search of his name showed me exactly how much trouble I'm in. Regina, he could buy this entire town if he wanted to. Honey, if he was going to do something, he would have done it already. Regina's dark eyes softened with concern. How's Eleanor doing this morning? The mention of her mother made Wren's chest tighten. She had a rough night. The new medication makes her nauseated. Her fingers found her mother's ring again, twisting it anxiously. I should have been there instead of lying awake feeling sorry for myself. Stop that right now, Regina commanded, her voice firm but gentle. You're doing everything you can. Eleanor would be the first to tell you that. The morning rush began and Wren threw herself into work, finding comfort in the familiar rhythm. Every time the door chimed, her heart jumped, expecting to see Cormac's tall frame filling the doorway. But he didn't come. Until he did. It was nearly closing time when he appeared, dressed more casually than the day before in a charcoal sweater and dark jeans that probably cost more than Wren's monthly rent. The scar through his eyebrow seemed more pronounced in the warm evening light, and something about him seemed different, less rigid perhaps. The cafe was empty except for old Mr. Phillips reading his newspaper in the corner. Wren's hands trembled slightly as she wiped down the counter, but she lifted her chin and met Cormac's gaze directly. Mr. Duval, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. I assume you're here about yesterday. I want to apologize again for my behavior. It was completely unprofessional and have dinner with me. The cleaning cloth dropped from Ren's hand. I'm sorry, what? He moved closer to the counter and she caught a hint of expensive cologne. You still owe me an apology. I thought we could discuss it over dinner. I just apologized. Twice. Those weren't real apologies. A slight smile played at the corners of his mouth. Those were fear speaking. I'd like to hear what you really think of me, Ms. Holloway. Ren stared at him, trying to understand his angle. How do you know my name? I make it my business to know things. He glanced around the cafe. Like, the fact that Haven's Corner has been here for 40 years, that you took over management 3 years ago when the previous owner retired, that your customer satisfaction ratings are among the highest in the state for independent coffee shops. You've been investigating me? Research is what I do. He leaned against the counter, looking more human than he had yesterday. So dinner? No. The word came out firm and clear. His eyebrows rose slightly. No? Mr. Duval, I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm not interested. Yesterday you treated me like something stuck to the bottom of your very expensive shoes. Today you want to have dinner? It doesn't add up. You're right, he said, surprising her. Yesterday, I behaved badly. I had just come from a frustrating meeting, but that's no excuse. I'm not used to people standing up to me the way you did. You mean hitting you? Because that's not usually my conflict resolution strategy. A genuine laugh escaped him, transforming his face. No, I mean before that. The coffee comment. Most people just apologize and scurry away when I'm in a mood. You pushed back. Ren crossed her arms. And that makes you want to have dinner with me? Are you that starved for honest interaction? The question seemed to hit something raw in him. For a moment, his carefully constructed facade cracked, revealing a glimpse of genuine loneliness. Maybe I am. The vulnerability in his voice caught her off guard. She studied him more carefully, the slight tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers tapped restlessly against the counter, the shadow of uncertainty in those steel blue eyes. One dinner, she heard herself say, immediately wondering if she'd lost her mind. But not because I owe you an apology. I apologized because it was the right thing to do, not because you deserved it. Tomorrow night? I'll pick you up at... I'll meet you there, she interrupted. Text me the details. He pulled out a business card and a pen, sliding them across the counter. Ren wrote her number, trying to ignore the warmth of his fingers as they brushed hers when she handed them back. Tomorrow then, he said, turning to leave. At the door, he paused. And Ms. Holloway? Wear something nice. I have a feeling you clean up well. After he left, Ren sank onto a nearby stool, her legs suddenly weak. What had she just agreed to? Well, Regina's voice came from the kitchen doorway, making Ren jump. That was interesting. How long were you standing there? Long. Enough to see that man look at you like you're the most fascinating puzzle he's ever encountered. Regina's eyes twinkled. And long enough to see you look at him like you're not sure whether to kiss him or slap him again. Regina. Just calling it like I see it, honey. The older woman started gathering her things to leave. But be careful. Men like that, they're used to getting what they want. Make sure you know what you want before you get too deep. Ren watched Regina leave, then pulled out her phone to call her mother. As it rang, she caught her reflection in the darkened window. Her hair was coming loose from its bun, her apron was stained with coffee, and her comfortable work shoes had a scuff on the toe. Wear something nice, she muttered, shaking her head. As if I have anything that would fit into his world. But, as she locked up the cafe and headed home, she couldn't stop thinking about the way his laugh had transformed his face, or the moment of vulnerability he'd allowed her to see. There was more to Cormac Duval than expensive suits and arrogance, and despite her better judgment, she wanted to know what lay beneath that carefully controlled surface. Tomorrow's dinner would either be the biggest mistake of her life or the beginning of something she couldn't yet imagine. Either way, she had a feeling nothing would be the same after it. The text message from Cormac had been simple. The Oak, room 8 p.m. A quick internet search revealed it was the most expensive restaurant in Green Valley, located in the historic Richardson Hotel. Of course it was. Wren stood in front of her mirror, scrutinizing her reflection. She'd borrowed a dress from her cousin Daniela, a deep emerald wrap dress that hugged her curves without being inappropriate. Her auburn hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders, free from its usual messy bun. The only jewelry she wore was her mother's ring and a delicate silver necklace. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," Eleanor called from her bed, where she was, propped up against several pillows. Despite her pallor, her eyes were bright with excitement. "Like a princess." "I'm not going to a ball, Mom." Wren adjusted the dress nervously. "It's just dinner with an arrogant CEO who probably wants to make sure I won't sue him for workplace harassment or something." Eleanor smiled knowingly. "Is that why you've changed your shoes 3 times? Before Wren could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from Regina. "Remember, you're worth more than his entire empire. Don't let him make you forget that." The Oak Room was intimidating in its elegance. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over dark wood panels and white tablecloths. A pianist played softly in the corner. Wren gave her name to the maitre d', who led her to a secluded table where Cormac was already waiting. He stood as she approached, and something flickered in his eyes as he took in her appearance. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit that made his eyes look more blue than gray tonight. "You look," he paused, seemingly searching for the right word. "Stunning." "Thank you." Wren sat down, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "This place is beautiful. It's one of the few restaurants in town worth visiting." He signaled the sommelier. "Wine?" "Just water for me, thank you." His eyebrows rose slightly. "The wine list here is exceptional." "I'm sure it is. But I need to be clear-headed when I drive home to check on my mother." Something in his expression shifted. "Your mother? She's ill?" Wren nodded, surprised by the genuine concern in his voice. "She has a chronic condition. Some days are better than others." "And you take care of her?" "She took care of me my whole life. It's my turn now." Wren met his gaze directly. "That's why I can't afford to lose my job over something like slapping a difficult customer, no matter how justified it felt in the moment." Cormac leaned back, studying her. "Is that what you think this dinner is about? You think I'm going to threaten your livelihood?" "Isn't it? Why else would someone like you be interested in having dinner with someone like me?" "Someone like you?" His voice held an edge now. "And what exactly am I like, Miss Holloway?" "Please call me Wren." She took a sip of water, gathering her thoughts. "You're someone who's probably never had to check their bank balance before making a purchase. Someone who sees the world as a series of transactions and acquisitions. Someone who plays piano at 3 in the morning because it's the only time I feel real," he interrupted, his words soft but intense. "Someone who built an empire because it was easier than building relationships? Is that who I am, Wren?" The vulnerability in his voice caught her off guard. Before she could respond, the waiter arrived to take their orders. Cormac ordered without looking at the menu, clearly irregular. Wren chose the first item she could pronounce, trying not to wince at the price. "I'm paying," Cormac said, reading her expression. "And before you object, consider it compensation for my behavior yesterday." "I don't want your money, Mr. Duval." "Cormac," he corrected. "And that's exactly why I'm here. Do you know how rare it is to meet someone who genuinely doesn't want anything from me?" Their appetizers arrived. Something delicate involving scallops that Wren had to admit was incredible. As they ate, the conversation flowed more naturally. She told him about growing up in Green Valley, about her dreams of expanding Haven's corner, about the poetry she wrote late at night when sleep wouldn't come. In return, he shared stories about building his company from the ground up, about the pressure of living up to his father's legacy, about the loneliness of success. The scar on his eyebrow, she learned, came from a childhood accident involving a treehouse and a desperate need to prove himself. I haven't told anyone that story in years, he admitted, looking almost surprised at himself. Why are you telling me? Because you look at me like I'm just a person. His fingers played with his wine glass. Not a bank account or a business, opportunity or a trophy to be won. Just me. The main course arrived. Perfectly cooked steaks that probably cost more than Ren's weekly grocery budget. As they ate, she found herself noticing small details about him. The way his hands moved when he talked about something he was passionate about, the slight dimple that appeared when he genuinely smiled, the sadness that lingered in his eyes despite his success. Tell me about your mother, he said suddenly. What does she need? Ren stiffened. I told you, I don't want your money. I'm not offering charity. I'm asking about someone you love. His voice was gentle. When was the last time someone asked you that, Ren? When was the last time you got to just talk about it? And somehow, in this elegant restaurant with its crystal and candlelight, Ren found herself telling him everything about the late-night emergency room visits, the specialists they couldn't afford to see, the experimental treatments that insurance wouldn't cover, about her fears and exhaustion and the guilt she felt for sometimes wishing she could just be young and free. When she finished, there were tears in her eyes. Cormac reached across the table and took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles in a gesture so tender it made her heart ache. Thank you, he said softly. For what? For trusting me with your truth. He squeezed her hand gently. I know what it's like to build walls to protect yourself, but sometimes, Ren, the walls we build to keep out pain also keep out love. The dessert they shared, a rich chocolate creation that melted on the tongue, felt almost symbolic. Two people from different worlds, sharing something sweet and temporary, knowing it couldn't last but savoring it anyway. When they finally left the restaurant, the night air was cool and clear. They stood on the sidewalk, neither quite ready to end the evening. Let me drive you home, Cormac offered. I have my car, Ren reminded him, and I need to check on Mom. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Thank you for tonight, Ren. For giving me a chance to be more than the person you met yesterday. Thank you for showing me that person exists. She smiled softly. Good night, Cormac. But as she turned to leave, he caught her hand. In one fluid motion, he pulled her close and kissed her. It was gentle, almost reverent, a kiss that asked permission even as it was given. His fingers traced her cheek with a tenderness that made her heart race. When they parted, both slightly breathless, Ren saw something new in his eyes. Hope, maybe. Or fear. Or both. Good night, Ren Holloway, he whispered against her lips. She drove home in a daze, her lips still tingling from his kiss. As she helped her mother get ready for bed, Eleanor noticed her distraction. Good dinner? She asked with a knowing smile. It was... Ren paused, touching her lips. Unexpected. Later, lying in bed, Ren stared at her ceiling, knowing sleep would be elusive tonight for entirely different reasons than the night before. Her phone buzzed with a text. Thank you for making me feel real tonight. C. She fell asleep with the phone in her hand, dreaming of steel blue eyes and gentle kisses and walls coming down brick by brick. The week following their dinner felt like a dream. Cormac came to Haven's Corner every morning, always precisely at 7:30 a.m., before the real rush began. He'd shed his jacket, roll up his sleeves, and sit at the counter, watching Ren work while they talked about everything and nothing. You're staring again, Ren said, not looking up as she prepared his espresso. The morning light streaming through the windows caught the auburn highlights in her hair, creating a halo effect that wasn't lost on Cormac. Can you blame me? His voice carried a warmth that made her cheeks flush. The way you move behind that counter, it's like watching a dance. Regina, wiping down tables nearby, made a sound somewhere between a snort and a laugh. If you're going to flirt with our manager, Mr. Duval, At least help us prep for the morning rush. To Wren's surprise, Cormac stood up. Show me how. And that's how the CEO of Duval Tech ended up learning to operate a coffee grinder, his $1,000, shirt sleeves rolled up, designer shoes dusted with coffee grounds. His first attempt at steaming milk resulted in a sound that made everyone wince. Careful there, Wren laughed, coming up behind him. Here. She placed her hands over his, guiding the pitcher. It's about feeling the temperature, listening to the sound, like this. The warmth of her body against his back, the softness of her hands on his, it was intoxicating. Cormac turned his head slightly, their faces inches apart. I think I need more instruction. Nice try, she whispered, stepping back with a knowing smile. But we have customers waiting. The morning regulars had gotten used to seeing him there, though whispers and curious glances still followed wherever he went. The local newspaper had already run a piece, speculating about why one of the country's most eligible bachelors was spending so much time in a small-town coffee shop. But in these early morning moments, none of that seemed to matter. They were just a man and a woman sharing coffee and conversation, learning each other's rhythms, until the letter arrived. Wren was going through the mail during a quiet afternoon when she found it, an official-looking envelope from Madison Development Corporation. Her hands trembled as she read the contents, the words blurring before her eyes. Notice of intent to purchase, residential redevelopment project, fair market value, 60 days to respond. Wren? Regina's voice seemed to come from far away. Honey, you've gone white as a sheet. What is it? They want to buy our neighborhood, Wren whispered, sinking into a chair. They're planning to build luxury condominiums. The entire block, including my house. The house where she'd grown up, where her mother was finally comfortable with her care routine, where every wall held memories she couldn't bear to lose. Can they do that? They're offering to buy, but... Wren's eyes scanned the document again. There's mention of potential eminent domain if enough property owners agree to sell. Her voice cracked. They're going to destroy our home. The bell above the door chimed. Cormac walked in, his smile fading as he took in Wren's expression. What's wrong? She held up the letter wordlessly. He took it, reading quickly, his face growing increasingly tense. When he looked up, something in his eyes had changed. Madison, Development, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Have you heard of them before? Only that they've been buying up properties all over town. Wren ran a hand through her hair, dislodging strands from her bun. Most people are selling. The offers are generous. But this house, it's all we have left of Dad. Mom's garden is there, her memories. I can't. She broke off, fighting tears. Cormac's hand twitched like he wanted to reach for her, but something held him back. When did you get this? Just now. Why? He folded the letter carefully, his movements precise. I need to go. I have some calls to make. Cormac? Something in his tone made her look up sharply. Do you know something about this? No, he said too quickly. I have contacts who might be able to help. Trust me? The last word hung between them like a question mark. Wren nodded slowly, even as something nagged at the back of her mind. After he left, Regina approached her desk. Did you notice how he didn't actually answer your question? What do you mean? About knowing something. Regina's dark eyes were worried. That man knows more than he's saying, child. I've been around long enough to recognize guilt when I see it. Guilt? Why would he feel guilty? But even as she asked the question, pieces started falling into place. The timing of his appearance in Green Valley, his sudden interest in a small coffee shop, the way he'd tensed when reading the developer's name. That evening, after closing, Wren sat at her computer and began to research. Madison Development Corporation, property acquisitions, Duval Tech expansion plans. Each new tab opened another piece of the puzzle she didn't want to complete. Her phone buzzed with a text from Cormac. Can I see you tonight? She stared at the message, her finger hovering over the reply button. Another browser tab caught her eye. A news article from 6 months ago. Duval Tech announces partnership with Madison Development for nationwide expansion. The piece mentioned plans for technology innovation centers in developing urban areas, with Green Valley specifically named as a target location. The article included a photo of Cormac shaking hands with Madison's CEO, both men smiling at the camera. Her phone buzzed again. "Ren, please, we need to talk." She thought of his hands guiding hers on the coffee machine this morning, of his laugh when she'd teased him about his poor milk steaming technique, of the way he'd kissed her that night, outside the restaurant like she was something precious and rare. With trembling fingers, she typed her reply. "Yes, we really do." She grabbed her keys and headed for the door, pausing only to look at the photo of her parents that hung behind the counter. Her father's smile, her mother's garden, the home they'd built together. It was all at risk. And the man she was falling for might be the reason why. The sun was setting over Green Valley as Ren drove to meet Cormac, casting long shadows across the streets she'd known all her life. Streets that might soon be unrecognizable. Her mother's ring felt heavy on her finger, a reminder of everything she stood to lose. The truth was coming, ready or not, and Ren had a feeling that by the time the sun rose tomorrow, nothing would ever be the same. The Richardson Hotel's rooftop bar seemed worlds away from Haven's Corner. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Green Valley, the town's lights twinkling like earthbound stars. Cormac stood at one of these windows, his silhouette sharp against the darkening sky, when Ren arrived. He turned at the sound of her footsteps, and something in his expression told her he already knew. Knew that she knew. Knew that everything was about to shatter. "How long?" Ren's voice was steadier than she felt. "How long have you known about Madison Development's plans?" Cormac's fingers tightened around his whiskey glass. "Since the beginning. Duval Tech is a major partner in the Green Valley Innovation Center project." "The beginning," she repeated softly. "So that first day in the cafe, you knew exactly who I was, where I lived, what was at stake?" "Yes." The simplicity of his admission hit harder than any excuse could have. Ren wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warm evening air. "Was any of it real?" She hated how her voice cracked. "Or was I just some project? Get close to the local girl, maybe convince her to sell willingly." "Ren, no." He took a step toward her, stopping when she backed away. "That first day, yes, I knew who you were. But everything that happened after, the dinner, the mornings, at the cafe, the way I feel about you, that's more real than anything in my life." "Don't." She held up a hand. "Just don't. You've been planning to destroy my home, my mother's home, while looking me in the eye every morning, while kissing me, while letting me trust you." Cormac set his glass down, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "It's not destruction, it's progress. The Innovation Center will bring jobs, technology, opportunity." "Opportunity?" Ren laughed bitterly. "For who? The people who've lived here their whole lives won't be able to afford those luxury condos. The small businesses will be pushed out by chain stores. You're not bringing opportunity, you're bringing displacement. The compensation packages are more than fair. Your mother could get the best medical care you could. Could what? Watch everything we've built disappear? Watch my mother lose the garden where she scattered my father's ashes?" Tears spilled down her cheeks now. "Some things aren't for sale, Cormac. Some things matter more than money." He moved closer, his voice urgent. "Let me help. I can make sure you get the best deal, find you a better place." "I don't want a better place." The words exploded from her. "I want my home. I want my community. I want—" She broke off, swiping at her tears. "I want the man I thought you were to be. Real." The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, a summer storm was rolling in, lightning flickering in the distance. It felt appropriate somehow, nature's own dramatic backdrop for their unraveling. "I can stop it," Cormac said suddenly. Ren looked up, hope and suspicion warring in her chest. "What?" "The project. I can stop it. One call to the board, withdraw Duval Tech's support." He reached for her hand. "For you, I would—" No. She pulled away. Don't you see, I don't want you to do it for me. I want you to do it because it's right, because these are people's lives you're playing with, not just numbers on a spreadsheet. Lightning flashed again, closer now, in its brief illumination. Wren saw something break in Cormac's expression, as if he was seeing himself clearly for the first time, and didn't like what he saw. I don't know how to be the man you want me to be, he whispered. I never wanted you to be anything but honest. She stepped back, creating more distance between them. You know what the worst part is? I understand the business logic. I understand progress and development and change. What I don't understand is how you could let me fall for you knowing you were going to take everything from me. Thunder rumbled overhead as Cormac moved to the window, pressing his forehead against the cool glass. When I came to Green Valley, everything was simple. Numbers, deals, progress. Then you slapped me and suddenly nothing was simple anymore. You made me question everything I thought I knew about success, about worth, about... He turned to face her about love. The word hung in the air between them, both too late and too soon. Love? Wren's voice was barely audible over the storm outside. Love is built on trust, Cormac, and you've been lying to me since the moment we met. She walked to the window, looking out at her town, at the lights of homes where families were living their lives, unaware that their world was about to change. Her childhood home was out there somewhere in the darkness, its garden waiting for tomorrow's sunrise. I need you to leave Green Valley, she said finally, still looking out at the night. Go back to New York, to your board meetings and profit margins. Forget about the small-town coffee shop manager who dared to stand up to you. Forget about... Her voice caught. Forget about us. Wren, please. And I need you to look me in the eye and tell me the truth just once. She turned to face him. Did you come to Haven's Corner that first day because you knew who I was? Was it all part of the plan? Cormac's silence was answer. Enough. Rain began to pelt the windows, distorting the view of the town below. Wren touched her mother's ring, drawing strength from it. Goodbye, Mr. Duval. She walked out of the rooftop bar with her head high, refusing to let him see her cry again. The elevator ride down was a blur, and by the time she reached her car, the storm had broken in earnest. She sat behind the wheel, finally allowing herself to break down. The rain matched her tears, drumming on the roof of her car as she grieved for what could have been, for the man she thought she knew, for the future she'd briefly allowed herself to imagine. Her phone buzzed. Cormac calling. She turned it off. The drive home was slow through the storm, but Wren barely noticed. Her mind was already racing ahead, planning, strategizing. If Cormac wouldn't stop the project because it was right, she would have to find another way. Her community deserved someone who would fight for it. As she pulled into her driveway, she saw a light on in her mother's garden room. Eleanor was awake, probably worried about her. The sight of the warm light spilling onto the rain-soaked flowers strengthened her resolve. Some things were worth fighting for. Some things were worth more than all the money in the world, and tomorrow she would start fighting. But tonight, she would cry for what was lost, for the taste of coffee and possibility in early morning light, for blue-gray eyes that had looked at her like she was magic, for the sound of genuine laughter during clumsy attempts at milk steaming, for the love story that almost was, but never, really had a chance. The storm raged on, but Wren knew that like all storms it would eventually pass, and when it did, she would still be standing, stronger, wiser, and ready to protect everything she held dear, even if it meant standing alone. 3 days after the confrontation at the Richardson Hotel, Haven's Corner had transformed. The usually peaceful cafe now buzzed with a different kind of energy as neighbors gathered around tables covered with papers, laptops, and determined faces. According to the zoning laws, Daniel Chen, a local real estate attorney who'd been coming to the cafe for years, pointed to a highlighted section of text. They can't just declare eminent domain without proving public benefit, and luxury condos hardly qualifies. Wren nodded, making notes on her already crowded legal pad. She hadn't slept much since that night, throwing herself into research and community organizing instead. Her usual neat bun had given way to a hastily secured ponytail and dark circles shadowed her eyes. "What about the historical preservation angle?" Regina asked, setting down fresh coffee for everyone. She'd been staying late every night, refusing to let Wren work alone. This neighborhood was one of the first settled in Green Valley. "That's exactly what I was thinking," said Mrs. Henderson, pulling out old photographs from her bag. "My grandfather helped build some of these houses. I've got documentation going back to 1892. The bell above the door chimed and everyone tensed. They'd gotten used to watching for men in suits. But it was just Eleanor, helped by their elderly neighbor, Mr. Martinez. "Mom." Wren rushed to help her mother to a chair. "You should be resting." "I've done enough resting." Eleanor's voice was tired but determined. "This is my fight too." She pulled out a folder of her own. "I've been making calls to my old garden club members. You'd be surprised how many of them have connections at City Hall." Wren squeezed her mother's hand, fighting back tears. The community's response had been overwhelming. Once word got out about Madison Development's plans, people had started showing up at Haven's Corner with offers to help. Lawyers volunteering their time, retired teachers digging through historical records, college students setting up social media campaigns. "Look at this," Daniel said, turning his laptop around. "Madison's done this before. Bought up historic neighborhoods, promised revitalization, then priced out all the original residents. There are 3 class action lawsuits pending in other states." Wren was about to respond when her phone buzzed. Cormac's name flashed on the screen, the 20th call she'd ignored this week. A moment later, a text appeared. "Please talk to me. There's more to this than you know." She turned the phone face down, but not before Regina caught a glimpse of the message. "He's still trying?" the older woman asked softly. "Every day." Wren forced a smile. "But we have more important things to focus on." The truth was, ignoring Cormac's calls was getting harder, not easier. Every morning she caught herself watching the door at 7:30, half expecting to see him walk in with that crooked smile. The coffee grinder still bore the marks of his clumsy attempts at learning to use it, and late at night when the cafe was empty and her defenses were down, she found herself remembering the way he'd looked at her that last night, desperate, conflicted, maybe even in love. But love wasn't enough, not when he was part of the system trying to destroy everything she held dear. "Wren," Daniel's voice snapped her back to the present. "We need to talk about next week's city council meeting. Madison's representatives will be there, and rumor has it they're bringing their big guns from New York." Her heart stuttered. "Big guns?" "Yeah, word is Cormac Duval himself is flying in to make the pitch for the Innovation Center." The room went quiet. Everyone knew about Wren's brief relationship with the Duval Tech CEO. It had been the talk of the town. Now they watched her carefully, waiting to see how she'd react. Wren straightened her shoulders, channeling every ounce of strength she had left. "Then we'll be ready for him." The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. They gathered signatures, prepared presentations, and built their case. Local businesses donated food for their planning sessions. Children made signs. Elderly residents shared stories that were recorded and prepared for presentation. The night before the council meeting, Wren stayed late at the cafe reviewing their strategy one last time. The rain that had started during her confrontation with Cormac had lingered all week, casting a gray pall over the town. "You should go home. Get some rest," Regina said, putting on her coat. "Tomorrow's a big day." "I will. Soon." Wren managed a tired smile. "I just need to finish this section on environmental impact." After Regina left, Wren found herself alone with her thoughts for the first time in days. The cafe felt different at night, quieter, more intimate, perfect for remembering things she was trying to forget. She walked to the coffee grinder Cormac had struggled with, running her fingers over the dials. Had any of it been real? Those morning moments when he'd looked at her like she was the only person in the world? The way his hands had trembled slightly when he'd first kissed her? The bell chimed. "We're closed," she called out, not looking up. "I know." Her heart stopped. That voice. She turned slowly to find Cormac standing just inside the door, rain dripping from his coat. He looked different, tired, unshaven, his usual perfect appearance slightly disheveled. "You shouldn't be here." Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "I know that too." He took a step forward. "But tomorrow, we're going to be opponents in that council meeting. And before that happens, I needed you to know something." "Don't." She held up a hand. "Please just go. I'm withdrawing Duvaltech's support from the project." The words hung in the air between them. Ren gripped the counter for support. "What?" "The board voted this afternoon. I convinced them the potential PR nightmare wasn't worth it." He smiled sadly. "That's the official reason anyway." "And the unofficial reason?" "You were right." He ran a hand through his wet hair. "About all of it. About community mattering more than profit. About some things not being for sale. About," he met her eyes, "about love needing trust." Ren's vision blurred with tears. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because tomorrow, when Madison's lawyers try to paint this as a simple business decision, I want you to know the truth. My company's withdrawal means the project will probably fall apart. The other investors won't risk it without our backing." Hope bloomed in her chest, but she fought it down. "And what do you want in return?" "Nothing." He moved closer, close enough that she could smell his familiar cologne mixed with rain. "I did it because it was right, like you wanted." Their eyes met, and for a moment, all the walls came down. She saw the man she'd fallen for. Not the powerful CEO, but the lonely soul who played piano at 3 a.m., who laughed at his own coffee-making mistakes, who was trying to learn how to be better. "Good night, Ren," he said softly, turning to leave. At the door he paused. "For what it's worth, none of it was a plan. That first day I came to your cafe because I was angry and arrogant. But every day after that, I came because you made me want to be the kind of man who deserves someone like you." Then he was gone, leaving only the lingering scent of rain and possibility. Ren stood in the empty cafe, her heart pounding. Tomorrow she would still stand up in that council meeting. Still fight for her community. Still be the strong one everyone needed her to be. But tonight she allowed herself to feel everything she'd been suppressing. The pain, the hope, the love that hadn't died no matter how hard she'd tried to kill. Eddie, outside the rain finally began to ease and a single star peeked through the clouds. Tomorrow was coming, bringing with it a new battle, a new beginning, and maybe, just maybe, a chance for redemption. The Green Valley City Hall had never been so crowded. Every seat was filled, with people standing along the walls and spilling out into the hallway. The air hummed with tension as Madison Development's representatives arranged their presentation materials at the front of the room. Ren sat in the front row, surrounded by her makeshift army of neighbors. Eleanor was beside her, looking stronger than she had in weeks, her garden club friends flanking her protectively. Regina had closed Haven's Corner for the day, and most of their regular customers had shown up to support them. "You ready for this?" Daniel whispered, adjusting his tie. He'd spent the past week preparing their legal arguments pro bono. Ren nodded, though her hands trembled slightly as she reviewed her notes. She'd barely slept after Cormac's visit to the cafe, his words playing on repeat in her mind. "I'm withdrawing Duvaltech's support from the project." The side door opened, and her heart stopped. Cormac walked in, but instead of joining Madison's team at the front, he took a seat in the back corner. Their eyes met briefly across the room, and she saw the ghost of a smile touch his lips. Mayor Richardson called the meeting to order, his gavel echoing through the packed chamber. "Today we're discussing Madison Development Corporation's proposal for the Green Valley Innovation Center project. We'll hear from both sides before opening the floor for public comment." Madison's lead attorney stepped forward, a polished woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm Victoria Blackwell, representing Madison Development. We're here today to present our vision for Green Valley's future." The presentation was slick, full of glossy renderings and impressive statistics. Job creation projections, tax revenue increases, property value improvements. everything that should matter on paper. But Wren watched the faces in the room as Miss Blackwell spoke. She saw Mr. Martinez grip his cane tighter when they showed the image of his block transformed into high-rise apartments. Saw Mrs. Henderson dab at her eyes when they casually mentioned relocating current residents. Saw her mother's hands clench into fists at the suggestion that their gardens could be reimagined as community spaces. Finally, it was their turn. Daniel started with the legal arguments, methodically dismantling Madison's claims about eminent domain and public benefit. Then came the Historical Society's presentation, the environmental impact reports, the Small Business Coalition's economic analysis. When Wren stood to speak, her nervousness fell away. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about every person in this room, every memory in those old houses, every dream that couldn't be captured in a corporate spreadsheet. Members of the council, she began, her voice clear and strong. You've heard a lot of numbers today. Job projections, revenue, forecasts, property valuations. But I want to talk about different numbers. She pulled out her mother's ring, holding it up. This ring is 42 years old. My father saved for 6 months to buy it, working double shifts at the factory that used to be on Mill Street. He proposed to my mother in the garden they planted together, the same garden where we scattered his ashes 15 years ago. The room was completely silent now. 3 generations of the Martinez family have lived in their house on Oak Avenue. Mrs. Henderson's grandfather's handprint is still visible in the concrete of their front steps, dated 1892. The Hendersons' maple tree has hosted 37 graduation parties, 12 wedding receptions, and countless summer barbecues that brought our neighborhood together. She turned to face the Madison representatives directly. You talk about progress, about the future, but you can't build a future by erasing the past. You can't create community by destroying one that already exists. Ms. Holloway, Ms. Blackwell, interrupted standing. While these personal anecdotes are touching, the reality is that progress requires change, and I should note that Duvaltech's recent withdrawal has no bearing on our plans to proceed. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Wren's eyes found Cormac in the back of the room. He sat forward slightly, his expression intense. Actually, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber, it does. All heads turned as Cormac stood and walked to the front of the room. Ms. Blackwell's smile faltered. Mr. Duval, I don't believe you have standing to speak at this meeting. As a potential property owner in the affected area, I believe I do. He pulled out a folder and handed it to the council clerk. I've just purchased the old Miller warehouse on Pine Street, and I'm officially requesting that it be designated as a historical landmark, given its significance in Green Valley's industrial development. More whispers, louder now. The Miller warehouse sat right in the middle of Madison's proposed development area. A historical designation would throw a massive wrench in their plans. Furthermore, Cormac continued, I've commissioned an independent study of the project's environmental impact on the local watershed. I believe council members will find the results concerning. Ms. Blackwell's face had gone from pale to red. This is highly irregular. No more irregular than trying to force an entire community out of their homes. Cormac's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Sometimes, Ms. Blackwell, the most profitable path isn't the right one. His eyes met Wren's, and in that moment, she saw everything he wasn't saying. This wasn't just about stopping a development project. It was about choosing what kind of man he wanted to be. The meeting continued for another hour, but the outcome was already clear. When the council finally voted to reject Madison's proposal, the room erupted in cheers. People were hugging, crying, celebrating. Wren found herself swept up in embraces, congratulations, tears of joy. Eleanor held her tight, whispering, Your father would be so proud. Regina was already planning a celebration at the cafe. Through it all, she kept catching glimpses of Cormac. He stayed in the background, accepting quiet thanks from council, members he knew, avoiding the media trying to get his statement. As the crowd began to thin, he headed for the door. Cormac, wait. The words left her mouth before she could stop them. He turned, and for a moment they just looked at each other. All the pain, all the trust issues, all the complications still existed, but something else existed too. Something that felt a lot like possibility. "That warehouse," she said finally. "What are you going to do with it?" "I don't know." He smiled slightly. "I hear there's a good cafe nearby. Maybe I'll stop by sometime and we can talk about it." "Maybe you will." He nodded once and walked out, leaving Wren standing in the emptying council chamber, her heart racing with more than just victory. Eleanor appeared at her side, linking their arms together. "Come on, sweetheart. Regina's making your favorite maple lattes to celebrate." As they walked to Haven's Corner, Wren looked around at her neighborhood, still standing, still whole, still home. The evening sun painted the old houses in shades of gold, and somewhere in the distance, a church bell rang. The fight wasn't over. Madison would probably appeal, try new tactics, look for other ways in. But today, love had won. Love for community, love for home, and maybe, just maybe, a different kind of love that was learning how to be better. Wren touched her mother's ring and smiled. Some things really weren't for sale, and some things, broken but beautiful, deserved a second chance to get it right. 2 weeks after the city council meeting, life in Green Valley had settled into a new rhythm. The Save Our Homes signs still dotted front yards, but they'd been joined by We Won banners and impromptu block parties. The sense of community that had always existed had grown stronger, forged in the fire of their shared fight. Wren was restocking supplies at Haven's Corner when Regina burst through the door, waving the local newspaper. "Have you seen this?" The headline read, "Duval Tech CEO announces Green Valley Technology Training Center, historic Miller warehouse to become community education hub." "He's really doing it," Wren murmured, scanning the article. The plan was ambitious. Free coding, classes for local youth, small business technology support, startup incubator spaces, all housed in the restored warehouse, preserving its historic facade while modernizing the interior. "There's more," Regina said, pointing to a quote halfway down the page. "Look what he said about why he chose Green Valley." Wren read aloud. "Sometimes success isn't about changing a place but learning from it. Green Valley taught me that true. Innovation comes from understanding and supporting existing communities, not replacing them." Her hands trembled slightly as she folded the newspaper. She hadn't seen Cormac since the council meeting, though he'd left one perfect cup of espresso on her counter each morning before the cafe opened, somehow managing to time it so they never crossed paths. "He's trying," Regina said softly. "Question is, are you ready to let him?" Before Wren could answer, the door chimed. Daniel Chen walked in, looking unusually excited for a lawyer on a Tuesday morning. "You're not going to believe this," he said, pulling out a legal document. "Madison Development is officially withdrawing all appeals. They're walking away completely." "What? Why?" "Apparently someone bought a controlling interest in their parent company and forced a change in direction." Daniel's eyes twinkled. "Someone with impressive resources and a newfound appreciation for historic preservation." Wren sat down hard in the nearest chair. "He didn't." "He did. Madison's new board is restructuring their entire approach to urban development. They're actually reaching out to community organizations for collaboration now." The bell chimed again. Eleanor wheeled herself in, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Sweetheart, you need to come home right now." "Mom, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Just come." The short drive home felt longer than usual. When they pulled up, Wren understood her mother's excitement. The garden, which had been struggling lately due to Eleanor's limited mobility, was transformed. New raised beds had been installed at wheelchair height, making everything accessible. A state-of-the-art irrigation system threaded through the beds and fresh mulch covered every pathway. "It was here when I woke up," Eleanor said, her eyes shining. "Along with this." She handed Wren a note written in familiar handwriting. "Because every memory deserves room to grow." See. Wren touched one of the raised beds, perfectly positioned for her mother to tend without strain. He remembered. Everything I told him that night at dinner about Dad's roses, about you struggling to garden. Lately, he did more than remember, Eleanor said softly. He understood. That evening, after closing the cafe, Wren found herself driving to the Miller warehouse. Construction equipment lined the parking lot, and lights blazed from the upper windows. She found the side door unlocked and climbed the stairs, following the sound of classical music. Cormac sat at a piano in what must have been an old office, his suit jacket draped over a nearby chair, sleeves rolled up as he played. Moonlight, Sonata. He didn't look up when she entered, but his shoulders tensed slightly, acknowledging her presence. "You've been busy," she said when the piece ended. "Had to do something with all those early mornings I suddenly had free." His fingers stayed on the keys, not quite meeting her eyes. "Though I did manage to learn how to make a decent espresso." "I noticed." She moved closer, looking around the space. "This is quite a project you're planning here. It needs work. Most things worth having do." He finally looked up then, really looked at her. "Wren, Thank you," she interrupted. "For the garden, for Madison, for all of it. I didn't do it to win you back." "I know." She leaned against the piano. "That's why it matters." Silence stretched between them, filled with everything unsaid. Outside, a train whistled in the distance, the 9:45 to Chicago, right on schedule. Some things in Green Valley never changed. "I'm not the same man I was when I first walked into your cafe," he said finally. "Good." She smiled slightly. "I liked him less. I still have a company to run, decisions to make, profits to consider. I know, I'm not asking you to stop being who you are." She touched the piano keys lightly. "Just to remember who you can be." Cormac stood slowly, moving around the piano until they were face to face. "And who is that?" "Someone who learns from his mistakes, who sees value in more than just bottom lines. Who plays piano at night and makes mediocre espresso in the morning." "Mediocre?" He raised an eyebrow, a hint of the old smirk playing at his lips. "I've been practicing." "Prove it." "Tomorrow? 7:30? Wren's heart raced at the familiar time. "I suppose we could have a professional evaluation of your technique. Just don't slap me if I get the milk temperature wrong." They both laughed, and something tight in Wren's chest began to loosen. This wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. "I should go," she said. "Mom's waiting up." "Of course." He stepped back, giving her space. "Tell her the roses should bloom by next week. I found cuttings from that heritage variety," she mentioned. Wren paused at the door. "Cormac, all this change you're making, the training center, Madison, everything, are you sure it's what you want?" He was quiet for a moment, considering. "I spent my whole life building things without understanding what they cost. Success without substance, progress without purpose." He met her eyes. "I want to build something that lasts. Something real." "Like what?" "Trust," he said simply. One cup of coffee at a time. The night air was cool as Wren walked to her car, carrying the echo of piano music and possibility. Above her, stars dotted the sky like diamonds scattered on velvet, and somewhere in the distance crickets sang their endless summer song. Tomorrow would bring what it would bring. For now, it was enough to know that sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest choices. Like a slap that wakes you up. Like a garden that helps you grow. Like a second chance offered one early morning cup of coffee at a time. Autumn arrived in Green Valley with a palette of burning reds and golds, painting the town in the colors of change. The Miller warehouse renovation was proceeding rapidly, its weathered brick facade now cleaned and restored, while inside, modern technology meshed seamlessly with historic architecture. At Haven's Corner, the morning dance had resumed, but with new steps. Cormac arrived each day at 7:30, no longer in immaculate suits but in clothes that actually showed wear, designer jeans with scuffs from construction site visits, cashmere sweaters with coffee stains from his determined efforts to master the espresso machine. "You're still holding the portafilter wrong," Ren said one quiet morning, watching him struggle. She'd been letting him practice before opening, telling herself it was purely professional courtesy. "Show me." He stepped aside, letting her demonstrate. "You make it look so easy." Years of practice. She tamped the grounds with practiced precision. "And genuine love for what I'm doing. Is that what I'm missing? Love for coffee making?" Their eyes met in the early morning light, both aware he wasn't really talking about coffee. 2 months had passed since their conversation in the warehouse, and they'd been carefully rebuilding. Not what they had before, but something new, something more honest. "Love helps," Ren said softly. "But so does patience. Here, try again." As she guided his hands through the motions, she noticed calluses that hadn't been there before. Evidence of time spent working alongside the construction crews at the warehouse. The CEO who'd first walked into her cafe would never have dreamed of physical labor. But this Cormac was different. "I have a meeting with the community college board today," he said, concentrating on the steam wand. "We're finalizing the partnership for the training center's certification programs." "Really? That's wonderful. Local accreditation will make such a difference for—" She broke off as hot milk splashed across the counter. "Maybe we should stick to drip coffee for now." His laugh, once so rare, came easily now. "Probably safer. Though I did manage to make one decent latte last week." "True. Only took you 37 tries." 38, Regina called from the kitchen. "I kept count." Their easy banter was interrupted by the arrival of Eleanor, wheeling herself in, with a basket of fresh roses from her renovated garden. The flowers had bloomed magnificently, thanks to the new accessible design and irrigation system. "Good morning, you two." Eleanor's eyes twinkled as she arranged the roses in small vases for the tables. "Cormac, dear, would you help me set these out? My arthritis is acting up this morning." Ren watched as Cormac carefully placed the vases according to Eleanor's precise instructions. Her mother had forgiven him far more quickly than Ren had, seeing in him something that reminded her of Ren's father, another man who'd learned to be better through love. The cafe began filling with its usual morning crowd. Local teachers grabbed coffee before class, construction workers from the warehouse project took their breaks here, and tech industry workers who'd discovered the cafe through Cormac now mixed comfortably with longtime regulars. "Ms. Holloway?" A teenage girl approached the counter shyly. "I just wanted to say thanks. The coding class at the new center? I got an A on my first project." Ren smiled warmly. "That's wonderful, Lucy, but I'm not the one you should thank." "Oh, I already thanked Mr. Duval. He comes to all our classes, you know. Sits in the back and takes notes like he's the student." After Lucy left, Ren raised an eyebrow at Cormac. "Taking notes?" He busied himself with wiping down the counter. "I have a lot to learn about teaching, about community, about—" He met her eyes. "About everything that matters." The morning rush ebbed, leaving them in a quiet moment. Sunlight streamed through the windows, catching the roses on the tables and making them glow like tiny flames. "Walk with me?" Cormac asked suddenly. "There's something I want to show you at the warehouse." 20 minutes later, they stood in what would soon be the center's main classroom. But it wasn't the high-tech equipment or restored wooden beams that caught Ren's attention. It was the wall of photographs. Dozens of them, professionally framed. Mrs. Henderson's grandfather's handprint in concrete. The Martinez family's 3 generations on their front porch. Graduation parties under the old maple tree. Eleanor's garden through the seasons. Even Haven's corner on opening day. Faded but precious. "These are all the photos people shared during the council meeting," Ren whispered. "The memories we were fighting to preserve." "They're going to hang here permanently," Cormac said. "So every student who comes through remembers that innovation isn't about erasing history, and it's about building on its foundation." Ren touched one of the frames. A Christmas celebration on Oak Avenue. Every house lit up, neighbors caroling in the snow. "You really have changed, haven't you?" "Not changed. Grown," He took her hand gently. You taught me that there's a difference. Their fingers intertwined naturally like they'd never forgotten how to fit together. Through the windows they could see the town spread out below them, the mix of old and new, tradition and progress, all coexisting in delicate balance. There's something else I want to show you, Cormac said, leading her to a smaller room off the main hall. This is going to be the Business Development Center. Small business owners can come here for tech support, marketing help, whatever they need. That's amazing. So many local shops could benefit from... She stopped, seeing the sign beside the door. The Eleanor Holloway Small Business Initiative. Your mother has been advising us on the program. Her business experience, her connection to the community, she's been invaluable. He squeezed her hand. And I wanted her name here because she represents everything this center should be about. Resilience, adaptation, growing without losing your roots. Tears pricked Ren's eyes. Does she know? We're surprising her at the opening next month. He turned to face her fully. Actually, I was hoping you both would consider being part of the leadership team. This place needs people who understand what community really means. Cormac. You don't have to answer now. Just think about it. His free hand came up to cup her cheek. Think about all of it. About us. About what we could build together. The moment hung between them, fragile and precious. Outside, a train whistle blew, the 10:15 to Chicago, right on schedule. But inside this room, time seemed to stand still. I should get back to the cafe, Ren said softly, but she didn't move. Probably. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Regina will send out a search party soon. Definitely. She leaned into his touch. She's very protective. I've noticed. His smile was tender. I had to pass quite an interrogation before she'd let me start coming to those early morning practice sessions. What did she ask you? If I knew what I'd almost lost? If I understood what I'd have to do to deserve a second chance? His voice dropped to a whisper. If I was ready to love someone more than my own ambition. And what did you tell her? The truth. He rested his forehead against hers. That I learn a little more about love every morning at 7:30. When they kissed, it was different from their first kiss outside the restaurant all those months ago. That had been passion and possibility. This was slower, deeper, a promise built on understanding, on growth, on trust, rebuilt brick by brick. They walked back to Haven's Corner hand in hand, through streets where history and future were learning to dance together. The roses Eleanor had placed that morning caught the autumn sunlight, their petals glowing like promises kept, like trust restored, like love that grows stronger for having been tested. Change, Ren was learning, didn't always mean loss. Sometimes it meant finding something you never knew you were missing. Sometimes it meant building something better than you'd imagined possible. One cup of coffee at a time. Spring returned to Green Valley like a long-awaited friend, bringing with it the scent of new beginnings. The Miller Technology and Community Center was set to open its doors, and Haven's Corner buzzed with excitement as final preparations were made for the grand opening celebration. Everything has to be perfect, Ren muttered, rearranging the coffee station for the third time. The cafe would be catering the event, and she'd been up since dawn, ensuring every detail was just right. Sweetheart, Eleanor called from her usual table, where she was putting final touches on flower arrangements. Come look at this. Ren joined her mother, who was holding out the morning's newspaper. The headline read, Green Valley Renaissance, How a Small Town Fought for Its Soul and Won. Below was a photo of Haven's Corner, morning light streaming through its windows, locals and tech workers mingling over coffee. They interviewed everyone, Eleanor said, beaming. Mrs. Henderson talking about her grandfather's house, Mr. Martinez about the neighborhood history. Even Regina shared the story about the day you slapped a certain CEO. Mom. But Ren was smiling as she skimmed the article. Her eyes caught on a quote from Cormac. Green Valley didn't just change my business strategy, it changed my understanding of what success really means. Sometimes the best investments are the ones you make in people, in community, in love. The bell chimed, and Cormac himself walked in, looking unusually nervous in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. Ready for the big reveal? Eleanor's eyes sparkled. She has no idea what's coming, does she? What are you two plotting? Wren asked suspiciously. You'll see. Cormac offered his arm to Eleanor, who had become his co-conspirator in recent months. Shall we? The center was magnificent. The historic brick exterior gleamed in the morning sun, while inside exposed beams and modern technology created a space that honored both past and future. People were already gathering, students from the pilot programs, local business owners, community leaders, and tech industry professionals who'd flown in from across the country. As Mayor Richardson began his opening speech, Wren noticed something odd. Her regular customers were positioning themselves strategically around the room, each holding something behind their back. Even Regina had slipped away from the coffee service with a secretive smile. And now, the mayor announced, I'd like to invite Cormac Duval to say a few words. Cormac stepped up to the podium, but instead of facing the crowd, he turned to Wren. 6 months ago, I walked into a coffee shop thinking I knew everything about success. I was wrong. The woman who runs that shop taught me that real success isn't measured in dollars or square footage. It's measured in the lives you touch, the communities you build, and the love you're brave enough to accept. He gestured, and suddenly everyone was moving. Mrs. Henderson stepped forward first, holding out a coffee cup. Then Mr. Martinez with another, Regina with a third. One by one, her neighbors and customers approached, each presenting a cup, forming a path through the room. Wren's hands trembled as she looked at the cups. Each one bore a memory written in familiar handwriting. First slap. First real conversation. First coffee lesson. First time you trusted me again. The final cup, held by Eleanor, read simply, First day of forever? Cormac took the cup from Eleanor and walked to Wren, getting down on one knee. Inside the cup was a ring. Not a massive diamond, but a delicate band that matched her mother's perfectly. Wren Holloway, he said softly, you taught me that some things aren't for sale. Love, trust, community. These are things you have to earn, day by day, choice by choice. I want to spend the rest of my life earning them with you. Tears blurred Wren's vision as she looked around the room, at her mother beaming with joy, at Regina trying to hide her own tears, at all the faces of her community, now inextricably linked with the man kneeling before her. A coffee cup tattoo and a proposal, she managed to say. We've come full circle. Is that a yes? She pulled him to his feet, taking his face in her hands. Yes? But you're still going to need more practice with the espresso machine. Their laughter and kiss were lost in the cheers that erupted through the room. Eleanor wheeled forward to embrace them both, pressing something into Wren's hand, a small packet of seeds from her garden. For new beginnings, she whispered. The celebration that followed was exactly what Green Valley did best. A perfect blend of old and new. Traditional recipes shared table space with gourmet catering. Tech executives chatted with local craftsmen. Students demonstrated their coding projects while elderly residents shared neighborhood stories. Later that evening, after the crowds had gone and the sun was setting, Wren and Cormac stood in Haven's corner. She was teaching him one last time how to make the perfect espresso. You know, she said, watching him carefully tamp the grounds. When you first came in here, I never imagined this is where we'd end up. No? He concentrated on his technique. What did you imagine? Honestly? Mostly about slapping you again. He laughed, the sound rich and free. I probably deserved it. I was lost, she finished for him. We both were in different ways. But sometimes you have to get lost to find your way home. The espresso he produced was perfect, rich, balanced, exactly the right temperature. As they shared it, standing close in the quiet cafe, Wren thought about all the paths that had led them here. About anger turned to understanding, mistakes turned to growth, broken trust rebuilt into something stronger. Through the window, they could see the center standing proud against the twilight sky. The historic warehouse and the modern technology. Within, the past and future not at war anymore but dancing together in perfect harmony. "I love you," Cormac said simply, no grand gestures needed anymore. "Every stubborn, challenging, beautiful part of you. I love you too." Wren touched her new ring, then her mother's. Every changed, growing, real part of you. Outside, the first stars were appearing, their light touching everything. The old houses with their history, the new center with its promise, and all the lives intertwined between them. A train whistled in the distance, right on schedule, its sound carrying both remembrance and possibility. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new chances to choose what mattered most. But tonight, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. Two people who had learned to see beyond surfaces, beyond first impressions, beyond the walls they'd built around their hearts. A community that had grown stronger through adversity. A love story that had begun with a slap and ended with a perfect cup of coffee. And in Eleanor's garden, tomorrow's roses waited to bloom, ready to add their beauty to the next chapter of a story that was really just beginning. 1 year later. The morning sun painted Haven's Corner in familiar shades of gold, catching on the new sign that hung beside the original. Haven's Corner and Technology Hub. The cafe had expanded into the adjacent storefront, creating a space where coffee and community still reigned supreme, but now with a side of tech support and small business mentoring. Eleanor's garden, thriving in its accessible design, had become a testament to adaptation and growth. Local schools brought students for lessons about sustainable gardening, while tech entrepreneurs often found themselves brainstorming their next big idea among the roses. "Perfect temperature this time," Wren said, taking a sip from the latte Cormac had just prepared. Her wedding ring caught the light as she lowered the cup. "You've finally mastered it." "Only took me a year of daily practice." Cormac's suit jacket was draped over a chair, his sleeves rolled up as always during their morning ritual. The scar through his eyebrow was now matched by a small burn mark on his wrist, a badge of honor from his barista training days. Regina emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray of fresh pastries. "At least he's trainable," she winked, "though I still remember when he couldn't tell a portafilter from a pour-over." The door chimed as students began arriving for the morning's coding class. The Miller Center had been so successful that they'd expanded some programs into the cafe's new space, creating an informal learning environment that brought together all parts of the community. Mrs. Henderson settled into her usual corner with her laptop. She'd been one of the first graduates of the senior digital literacy program. Mr. Martinez was teaching his grandson how to use the 3D printer they'd installed last month, the old and the new, woven together seamlessly. "Almost. Time for the board meeting," Cormac said, checking his watch. He now ran most of Duval Tech's operations from Green Valley, flying to New York only when necessary. The company's new community-first development model had become a case study in sustainable corporate growth. "Don't forget we're meeting Mom at the garden center after," Wren reminded him. "She's determined to expand the butterfly sanctuary." Eleanor had become the heart of the center's environmental education program, teaching both conservation and adaptation. Her gardens now spread beyond their yard, creating green spaces throughout the neighborhood that brought beauty and life to every corner. As Cormac gathered his things, he paused to kiss Wren goodbye. "See you at home?" "At home," she smiled, touching the small bump that was just beginning to show beneath her apron, their own personal new beginning, due in autumn. Through the windows, Green Valley sparkled in the morning light. The historic houses stood proud alongside sensitively designed modern additions. The streets buzzed with a mix of longtime residents and newcomers, all part of a community that had learned the most valuable lesson. The best changes don't erase what was. They build on what remains, and grow into something more beautiful than anyone could have imagined, one cup of coffee at a time. Just as Ren had to choose between protecting her home and opening her heart to someone who initially posed a threat, we all face moments when we need to decide whether to give a second chance to someone who has hurt us. What was the moment in your life when you had to choose between protecting your heart or risking trusting again? How did that decision transform your life? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.